Good evening, everybody. Welcome to our Trade Justice Alliance call. And tonight we are going to be talking about corporate globalization's great water theft, how TPP would mean greater water insecurity both at home and abroad. Our speakers tonight, our special guests, are Monica Lewis-Patrick of We the People of Detroit, Mitch Jones of Food and Water Watch, our activist Adam Weitzman, Global Justice for Animals and the Environment, and Trade Justice, Mark Cohen of People Demanding Action, and Dr. Margaret Flowers of Popular Resistance and Flush the TTIP will be joining us, along with hopefully a very special guest from Peru, Wendy, and all of a sudden my mind, Wendy Stephanie. I'm Andrea Miller. I'm the disjointed voice on the phone. I'm the executive director of People Demanding Action. Hopefully everybody has called in because the audio is on the telephone, because it gives us the best quality and we also get a very, very good recording. We ask people not to use their video camera because I live in rural Virginia, and if too many people turn on their video camera, it crashes the meeting room. So no video camera. There's going to be a lot of us tonight. All calls are recorded. So if you wish to listen to this call again, or you want to share it with friends who are not able to join us tonight, you will be able to do so. There will be a Q&A mode. As a matter of fact, we are going to have two Q&A sections. There will be one with Monica and Mitch, and there will be a second with our activist team members. And then we also are going to have you press *6 to get on the queue to ask a question. But I will remind you when we get to that part. As I mentioned before, all our audio is on the telephone, so hopefully you've dialed that number. I see a lot of things happening in the meeting room because in the chat room, so that's excellent. And at the end of the call, you can download the PowerPoint at the link that is on the screen. And a little bit later, I will paste that in the chat box for you. It takes a lot of us to put this call together. So I'm going to very quickly go through our team. Tom Hawking is on the line tonight. He's our technical advisor. He's our Facebook page manager. You can reach Tom at twhawking@gmail.com. Tom is with Move On in Pennsylvania. You can also contact Tom for any pre- or post-call technical questions, and he is the manager of our Global TPP Facebook page. Celeste Drake, I don't believe Celeste is with us tonight. I'm looking and I don't see her. She's the Trade and Globalization Policy Specialist at the AFL-CIO. As I mentioned, there's a number of organizations that do this. Harriet Haywood is a member of our call planning team. She's the call co-organizer. She's the Florida State leader of People Demanding Action. Sherry Marks, if you've been on our call, has been on our calls for quite a while. She is part of the outreach team. She does the social media development coordinator. She's a citizen journalist with Occupy Hawaii, Iowa 99 Media YouTube channel, and she's a publicity technician. Also tonight, Linda Brewster is with us. She's a Move On organizer in Washington State. And Lisa Oldendorf is actually on her way back to New York from D.C. She was attending the Democracy Awakening event today. And now, I'm done introducing the team. I am delighted and thrilled to introduce you to Monica Lewis-Patrick. Monica is an educator. She's an entrepreneur. She's a human rights activist. She is co-founder and current president and CEO of We the People of Detroit, an organization that works for human rights for the people of Detroit. Monica is a water warrior. She's active on the People's Water Board Coalition and the World Water Justice Council. Monica was former legislative policy analyst for the Detroit City Council. She's written legislation. She's done research and constituency services for Detroit City residents. She is at the forefront of the water rights struggle in Detroit and most recently presented before the United Nations Secretary General's Advisory Board on Water and Sanitation, DECA, in New York City, along with several other national and international leaders addressing the global water crisis. We, the People of Detroit, hosted the United Nations Rapporteurs on Water, Sanitation, and Housing in Detroit in October 2014, challenging the denial of clean, safe, affordable water to city residents. Through the Community Research Collective, a project of We the People of Detroit, the group is publishing a 3-part series documenting the effect of austerity and its relationship to race in Detroit. She's appeared on numerous local and national media outlets related to her work. She attended Bennett College, is a graduate of East Tennessee State with a bachelor's in general studies in social work and sociology, a master in liberal arts with a concentration in criminal justice, sociology, and public management. Gee, I wonder if Rick Snyder knows all that. Monica, thank you so much for joining us. Welcome.
Intersecting of issues, and I know that it's very important, especially with water and what we're seeing roll out here in Michigan, in Flint, and Detroit, that we are connecting and intersecting the issue of water with all of our issues because these austerity measures that we know are happening with the emergency managers, specifically at the hand of Rick Snyder, we are at war. And sort of saying that, I wanted to begin by that statement of being at war. My mother is a 24-year military veteran. She retired from the U.S. Army as a master sergeant. She's an expert at putting up a military hospital in a war zone. She's also a retired nurse from the Veterans Administration. And when we first began to talk to each other about what was happening here in Detroit with water shutoffs, and my organization has also been working in Flint for the last 2 years around this contaminated water issue, she told me, she said, you know, shutting off water is an act of war. And I didn't know how to take that at first. And as I thought about it, and I thought about what her expertise were, when she said that to me, I asked her, I said, tell me that one more time. And she said, shutting off water is an act of war. And so from that particular moment, we begin to understand that we are in a war to ensure that we are fighting for and protecting human rights and definitely the rights of those that are economically disenfranchised. And so if we could actually go to the first slide. One of the things we wanted to make sure we were doing is after we came through the bankrupting of Detroit, which we know technically did not have to take place, Judge Rhodes told us that he knew that people were going to die, people were going to get sick, there was going to be irreparable harm, but it was more important to move forward with the bankruptcy than it was to make sure that people had water that they could afford and that they could access. And so what we did is we got together with some of our young people and our students, and then we also collaborated with 8 universities and colleges to be able to map and then also be able to do a door-to-door impact study, along with collaborating with Michigan State to do water testing that will take place in about 3 weeks. And then the last part of it will be we are working with some of our young people to record the stories, the anecdotal stories of persons that have been shut off from water, that have been displaced in terms of school closings, in terms of pension cuts, health care cuts, things of that nature. And so emergency management is where we believe the heart of this has actually taken place, and we wanted to be able to map that first. If you can go to the next slide, please. This is the water system for the city of Detroit Water and Sewage Department. If you'll look at the deepest teal portion of it, that's the city of Detroit. That's DWSD. If you'll look at all of the black lines, that is the water pipeline. All the way up to the top of the screen, if you're facing the screen to your left at the very top, that's Flint. So that's how expansive the water system is. Detroit actually at one point provided water to 4.3 million Michiganders. Almost half the state of Michigan received its water from the city of Detroit. Detroit had an award-winning, internationally award-winning system in terms of providing water to many municipalities, over 126 municipalities and townships. What we've seen happen with the privatization of DWSD is that they have taken the internal operations of Detroit Water and Sewage Department under the guidance of Veolia, which is an international privatization entity that has had its hands in privatizing not only water but transportation, not only here in the States but on an international level in places like Palestine, and they were thrown out of Paris, actually. They have had their hand in Baltimore and St. Louis. And so what we know is that while they were trying to privatize the internal operations of DWSD, they were also advising Flint to drink poison water in terms of being able to push forward with establishing the Karagandhi Water Authority. And so you've got a system that was paid for and bonded by the citizens of Detroit, but is actually going to feed into a system that is going to generate revenue for others on the backs of leaving the debt with the citizens of Detroit. During the bankruptcy, the only thing that was left out of the bankruptcy, the largest debt that we had, was the water system. We find that interesting because what it did is it allowed them to keep the Detroit water system insolvent, to weaken it for regionalization, and what we know is eventually privatization. The next slide, please.
Well, what I'm saying is it would be nice to be able, you could sit here and you wouldn't have to strain your eyes. You could see it.
This slide here we think is key because one of the things that many people don't know, especially in the suburbs, is Detroit sells its water to its suburban customers wholesale. The citizens of Detroit pay retail for accessing water. And so we wanted to be able to show that the markups that many people are experiencing in the suburbs is happening with their own municipalities. Here we have the example of Berkeley, Michigan, and Beverly Hills, and Lathrop Village, and Royal Oak, Southfield, Hazel Park. And then at the very bottom, you can see that very teal line shows what the markup is for Detroit. that we're paying retail. Next slide, please. This here is just another example of the markup of the municipalities that we service through DWSD. If you're not in Michigan, you may not know that there is a history of racialized division between Detroit and the suburbs. It dates back to the early 40s. There was an exodus of white flight from the city of Detroit. Then there was a second wave of white flight right after the 1967 rebellion. And so what has happened over time is that this division has been fed by policies, by allocations of dollars or the lack thereof as it relates to Detroit because of the population. But at the same time, over 126 municipalities were being serviced. Many of these municipalities are marking up the water anywhere from 100% to 1,000%. The next slide, please. This here just displays the water shutoff policies. What we found is, as we were plotting this, is that the most egregious water shutoff policies in the state of Michigan seem to coincide with where Flint is and where Detroit is. What we found in the suburbs is that a lot of their policies state that if there is at least 3 consecutive billing periods where water bills are not paid, then water is shut off. But their water cycles are running anywhere from 2 to 3 months per billing period. So you could go anywhere from 6 months to 12 months before your water would actually be in jeopardy of being shut off. Whereas in the city of Detroit, what we know is happening is that if you owe a bill of more than $150, then you're in jeopardy of having your water actually shut off. The next slide, please. This slide here we just thought was key because what it actually shows is that prior to the bankruptcy, that water was shut off at a very reasonable, what we thought was reasonable in terms of what the demographics of the city was and what people's transitioning looked like. But what we saw is that immediately after the bankruptcy, there was a ramping up that happened where people were being shut off at the rate of about 4,000 households per week. And then when there was pushback from the community and a moratorium happened, and there was at least a brief slowing down of shutting off water. But then as soon as that moratorium ended, then there was an acceleration like we had never seen in this city. But we continue to want to evidence the fact that the activists continue to speak up and stand up, as we did with Netroots Nation and the Nurses Union, National Nurses Union that came in. Again, when we brought in the United Nations, they began to slow down. But as soon as the United Nations left and there was no longer a national spotlight on what was happening with water shutoffs, it ramped back up again. Flint was active in all of these. They came and provided testimony. I know many people are only hearing about it in the last few months, but the activities in Flint, we have been in collaboration working side by side for the last 2 years. The next slide, please. This here just breaks down the debt. Over 80% of the bankruptcy was on the backs of the pensioners. We think this is key because it also shows that the swap deals could have been renegotiated. That debt could have been, in our estimations, reduced down to about $127 million, which would have created some cost savings, which would have allowed us to invest in infrastructure and some upgrades. But that's not what happened. And so we know that they're even talking about coming back again and taking another bite out of the apple as it relates to our pensioners. The average pension is about $19,000 a year. They've already taken a hit in terms of their health care. Many of our pensioners were paying about $150 a month for health care. Now they're paying $500 to upwards of $1,000. And we know that at least for many pensioners, about 50% of their income goes to their health care. The next slide, please. This is just another slide actually displaying the same thing as it relates to the water debt and the water swap. The next one, please. this year we just thought was key. It's very important, given the fact that what we know has happened in Michigan is many places where land is adjacent to water, especially if there has been a large concentration of people of color, black and brown folks, that land has been commandeered. We've seen it in Benton Harbor as relates to Gene Clark Park. We've seen it as it relates to Flint because we know that the Karagandhi Water Authority, we believe that there is going to be a fracking business that the governor has his hand in that's going to be built parallel to that particular pipeline. We know also in terms of what has happened here in Detroit with the Great Lake Water Authority that is under the control and management of the Veolia, as well as the internal operations of Detroit with Veolia. But here this displays that there has not been one neighborhood in the city of Detroit that has not been impacted by water debt. We've seen over the last 10 years water rates increase to the tune of about 126%. The only places that haven't been touched are the waterfront area, which is downtown, and then also if you look at the area in the center, that's Highland Park and Hamtramck, and then what is Cass Corridor that has been renamed and gentrified into Midtown. And so we know that water rates are going to continue to increase, especially as more of those entities are being moved toward privatization. What we know on a global level is everywhere that water has been privatized and commodified, those rates have increased and the quality of the water has diminished. So I would hope that everyone on the phone line would understand the importance of making sure that we are advocating for water to be maintained as a human right, that we are advocating for water to be maintained as a common, that everyone should have access to, that water should be clean, safe, and affordable. I put up several web sites where you can get more information, where you can join a national initiative that we're a part of called affordablewaternow.org. Please sign on to that initiative. Also go to our webpage, We the People of Detroit. We're also in collaboration with the People's Water Board, with Detroiters Resisting Emergency Management, and we have a research project that is on the move, and we hope to be announcing very soon the publication and our release. But thank you again for this time, and I appreciate it, Andrea, always to be with you and all of the amazing leadership from around the country.
So trade deals like the TPP, really do affect or undermine water quality and access. And there are three different ways that we at Food and Water Watch work on water that will be affected, could be affected, would be affected by the TPP. One of those, the first one I'll mention, is fracking. Food and Water Watch has been working nationwide for a ban on fracking. As you all know, it uses billions of gallons of water and toxic chemicals to force natural gas or oil out of the ground. The way the TPP would affect that is that it would rubber stamp natural gas exports to Japan, which is already the world's largest importer of natural gas. This would drive demand. It would push for even more fracking here in the U.S. and therefore more water contamination, as well as all of the other environmental disaster that comes along with fracking. So a lot of people talk about fracking in the TPP, but what you don't really hear more about are two other important water access issues. The first is water privatization. Monica talked about water privatization a bit. Again, we at Food and Water Watch, we work with communities across the country to protect public water utilities. We have a specific campaign designated to fighting water privatization here in the U.S. And what we have found is that private water companies have used the Great Recession to try and get cities to sell their water systems. And when they do so, if they're successful, they gouge ratepayers and lower investments in the system, leading to all sorts of problems with water quality and leaks, spills, water main breaks. What the TPP would do, and I'll say a little bit more about this in a minute, but what the TPP would do is it would lock in privatization, and it would make it much more difficult for cities to get their systems back once they have been privatized. And then the last area in where the TPP and deals like it would affect water is with the issue of bottled water and bottled water extraction. We at Food and Water Watch have a Take Back the Tap campaign where we campaign. It's part of our efforts to get adequate funding for water utilities as well. But looking at water bottle plants that extract both groundwater and municipal water reserves. And then, of course, the bottled water you buy is actually sold at an incredible markup compared to what you would be paying for the water as it comes out of your tap. Andrea, can we go to the next slide, please? So trade agreements like the TPP include not just trade in goods, but also trade in services. And in the TPP, the services provisions expand some of what was already included with the World Trade Organization, or WTO's, services provisions. And what they'll do is they'll ensure that foreign service companies have access to American markets. The United States insisted that the TPP include wastewater or sewer systems in the list of services in the service sector section covered by the TPP. Then two additional trade deals that are currently being negotiated would affect the drinking water side, the Transatlantic Trade and Investment Partnership, or TTIP, and the World Trade Organization's Trade and Services Agreement, or TISA, will likely not only include wastewater, but also include drinking water. And we expect this because the European Union that the TTIP agreement is being negotiated with is home to the world's largest and most aggressive water companies, private water companies. Again, Monica mentioned Veolia, which is headquartered in Paris and recently lost its contract for Paris. So we will expect that the European Union is going to demand full access to the entire water utility market in the United States as part of TTIP. And this would bring water services under the provisions of the TPP, TTIP, and TISA, meaning that foreign trading partners, anybody who's a party to any of these agreements, would be able to challenge the United States if local governments resist water privatization. Obviously, this is problematic for a variety of reasons. But beyond that, the TPP also, of course, as we all know, includes the investor-state dispute settlement. And ISDS is a provision that will allow foreign companies to sue for damages over new policies that supposedly erode their business expectations. So for private water companies, what that can mean is policies or actions that local utilities or governments take to prevent price hikes, or to require companies to meet certain water standards, or to make certain investments for repairs, or for certain maintenance of the surface. And let's go to the next slide, please, Andrea. So what's at stake on wastewater with the TPP? Right now, the TPP have what we would consider a fairly modest footprint in the United States. And so what I mean here by this is companies that have businesses in countries that are a party to the TPP. So firms like, there's a Canadian firm called Utilities Inc., which operates a private water system in about 9 cities in the U.S., as well as in a few developments in places like Alaska and Texas and Illinois and Louisiana and Florida and New Jersey. Overall, there are about 2,000 privatized sewer systems in the United States, including a system in almost every single state. And based on our research, it looks like Nebraska, North Dakota, and of course Washington, D.C. are the only states with no private sewer companies currently working. The majority of the U.S. population is served by public water and sewer, and most of the private systems are actually in smaller communities. But the broad footprint of private wastewater in America means that nearly the entire country would be vulnerable to TPP services rules. So even if there isn't a privatized system currently, given the fact that TPP is going to apply to the entire wastewater utilities field, there would be a broad exposure to these bad rules. Let's move on to the next slide, please. So the TPP's market access rules ensure companies the right to establish a private service once that sector has been opened. So once the sector, in this case the wastewater sector, is open to privatization, then the TPP's rules will ensure companies the right to be able to establish private service. And since private wastewater is already a toehold across the country, TPP countries can use the services chapter to push for market access. So the TPP would prohibit regional and local governments from restricting the type of entity that provides a service, meaning the policies or actions that discourage private wastewater systems would be considered or could be considered illegal trade barriers under the TPP. So in addition, efforts to block privatization by city councils could be considered blocking TPP market access. So if a city council attempts to fight privatization or make privatization more difficult through ordinance, that could, under TPP, be considered blocking market access. And local efforts to re-municipalize water systems would also most likely be considered trade barriers. So in addition, the TPP has prohibitions against regulatory oversight covering, and this is a quote, all measures of general application affecting trade and services. So that could be any rules whatsoever. It could be rules about labor. It could be rules about the environment, about financial standards, anything. So TPP partner countries could bring state-to-state disputes against the United States over local efforts to curb or reverse or regulate wastewater privatization, and they could enforce it with trade tariffs. And the U.S. would very likely try to force the local government to back off its fight against privatization rather than face the tariffs. Last year, for instance, Congress repealed the country of origin meat labels that we had as a law rather than face tariffs under the NAFTA. So language that seemingly exempts essential government services in the TPP, and there is language in there that appears to exempt government services, is really pathetically weak. The government procurement exemption only applies to purchases for things like consultants, but not to buying services for citizens, which is what utilities do. Let's go ahead and move to the next slide, please. Now, thinking for a second about TTIP, actually, can you go one more, Andrew?
Happy to.
There we go. All right. So looking at TTIP here, the trade rules under TPP, but also under TTIP and most likely TISA, are going to really undermine public efforts to return water systems, both wastewater and drinking water, to public control. So between 2007 and 2014, the number of private drinking water systems in the U.S., so the number of privatized drinking water systems in the U.S. dropped by 10% between 2007 and 2014. So since 2004, we at Food and Water Watch have cataloged more than 100 private wastewater or private combined wastewater drinking water systems that were re-municipalized, and you can see some of that there on the map. There's about 60 foreign private water utilities that were re-municipalized, including about 50 that are combined wastewater and drinking water systems, and about 10 that were just drinking water. And these are owned by the large European water companies like Suez, Veolia, and Severn Trent. So far, none of the TPP private wastewater companies have been re-municipalized. But if they were, Canada, which is the main company with, or the main country with private utilities running wastewater utilities in the U.S., would be able to bring a TPP case. Should TTIP come along and have these same provisions, what we would be looking at is anytime somebody tried to take a system back from Veolia, Veolia could, under the agreement, make a case arguing against the privatization as denying it access to markets. And that's just if we're looking at state-to-state, the normal state-to-state system. This isn't actually including yet the investor, the ISDS system, the investor state system. So let's go to the next slide. So there have been, under other trade deals, water privatization issues that have been litigated using versions of the investor state dispute system. The TPP includes these provisions that allow foreign firms to sue for damages if new rules or policies infringe on their profit expectations. Now, in the past, these deals were under bilateral or country-to-country trade agreements. Really the most famous one, the most notorious one, was the disastrous Bechtel takeover of the water system in Cochabamba, Bolivia. There, Bechtel jacked up rates and reduced services, and that actually led to what's known as the Cochabamba Water War, when the public rose up in protest against the privatization of their water system. Bolivia eventually reversed the privatization, but Bechtel brought suit under investor-state dispute to demand payment for their expected earnings from the venture. So they no longer ran the water system, but they still wanted to be paid. Eventually, and ultimately, the case was settled out of court, but that was only because of tremendous pressure brought by local activists in Bolivia as well as international water activists. Argentina also, by the way, has faced a large number of ISDS cases over privatization, and they've paid out over $600 million in penalties, including having to pay an Enron subsidiary for canceling a contract for failing to provide clean water. So the Enron subsidiary failed to provide clean water, the contract got canceled, and Argentina had to pay that company for canceling the contract. Let's go to the next slide, please. All right, so there have been a handful of these ISDS, investor state cases, involving bulk extraction of water for export. There's a U.S. company that lodged a $10 billion suit against Canada because British Columbia has a moratorium on bulk water exports. So this is the sort of thing that we could expect to see more companies trying to do under the rules of something like TTIP. And you're going to see more companies and more countries trying to get water to transfer as more and more areas around the world are dealing with drought caused by climate change. So, there's actually a company that wants to take water in bulk from Alaska and transport it to India. They haven't gotten permission to do this, but this is the sort of thing that we see companies wanting to do. And this would all be covered by these sorts of trade deals. Grant you, India is not part of TPP at the moment. There are two water bottling companies in Europe that brought investor-state cases against the Czech Republic and against Slovakia because the governments there resisted the water bottling plants and their proposed extractions. They didn't want to be having this water be extracted to be bottled and shipped abroad. The cases were dropped, but it was still a rather expensive endeavor because the countries had to pay the legal fees involved in defending themselves. There are currently 9 water bottling firms operating in the U.S. that are from TPP countries. And local efforts to limit access to water resources or municipal water, which, by the way, is the most common source of bottled water, could draw a multi-million-dollar ISDS case. And so there's communities in Maine and Oregon, in California and Connecticut, and elsewhere that are fighting water bottling plants that would draw down their water reserves. All of these could be threatened, would be threatened under TPP. Let's go on to the next slide. Oh, excellent. We're done. So that's the end of what I have to say. As you can see, we can do it. We can stop the TPP, and if you would go to the next slide, Andrea. I believe there's one more. There you go. So here's a couple of different things you can do. Obviously we need to keep telling our representatives to vote against TPP. You can text TRADE to the number there. You can call that number 877-852-4710 and get connected to your representative's line. With that, I will leave it there.
Thank you very, very much, Mitch, and thank you, Monica. And I want to give our callers an opportunity to ask questions of our guests. So if you have a question, *6 on your phone, that will put you in the queue. Caller at 586. Go ahead.
Yeah, both my questions are for Monica. Since I live here in Michigan and so close to the Flint crisis. Well, the first one is this is my first call, so I'm wondering how can I contact Monica for one thing, and the other thing is there anything that we can do petition-wise to get this governor recalled or something, because he's handled this water crisis terribly. So I'm just wondering if Monica has any suggestions about if there are petitions online to actually have this governor recalled from office.
First of all, thank you for your question. There is an initiative going on to try to recall the governor. The concern is that it's definitely one of those things where, because of the challenges that happened at the state level with the Michigan Board of Canvassers, it did not meet the window to be able to get on the ballot for the presidential election. And so there is a delay there. But I can put you in contact with those persons that could help you be a part of that. If you'll contact me at We the People of Detroit at Gmail.
What is your contact information, Monica? Do you have an email address?
Yes, We the People of Detroit at Gmail. That comes straight to me.
Oh, it's We the People of Detroit at gmail.com, I assume, right?
Yes, sir. And that'll come straight to me.
I just put it in the chat box.
Thanks so much, Andrea. And then for the other part of your question is that I think what has to happen is several things. One is that we believe it's got to be a three-part strategy. We've got to educate, litigate, and agitate. We really want to make sure that people know some of the same banks that benefited from the bankruptcy with Detroit, J.P. Morgan's, Citigroup, Chase, UBS, Bank of America. Many of those same banks are also buying up the aqua fillers around the world. And so we've got to educate ourselves on that. We've got to educate our people on buying bottled water, really trying to make sure that we're turning on the tap and taking advantage of making sure that the water sources that are coming out of our tap are safe and are affordable. I think the other thing we've got to do is educate each other on what's happening around Nestle. We've got to consider possibly economically targeting some of these corporations to make them feel the pain. I think we've also got to look at uniting around a national policy that says that water should be clean, safe, accessible, and affordable. And I think that that's got to be a national agenda that we all must embrace, and then we all must support an international policy that makes water a human right for everyone. I know that we've had it, in terms of the UN, but we haven't had, I don't think, in this country enough of a push to ensure that it happens here.
Yeah, because the situation here, in fact, you know this, Monica, just Friday I heard on the radio that one of the school districts in Detroit had to have their water tested because the levels in that school district in Detroit was high.
Yeah, there are over 16 schools that have tested positive with extremely high levels of lead. But we also have to look at several things that are tie-barred to this as well. We know that the Koch brothers are definitely a part of benefiting from what's getting ready to happen around the need to upgrade the infrastructure of the country. If you look at it, Charles Koch is connected to the American Water Workers Association. We know that they make this plastic sleeve that is unique in terms of a patent on it, that, it's going to be something that probably at a federal level they're going to be allocating a lot of funding toward. And so, they're the same people that are hurting us in terms of these austerity measures are some of the same people that we're turning around and we're going to be beholden to in terms of accessing our or at least having some access to our water sources. And so we've got to be very careful this road we're going down in terms of debt, in terms of water, in terms of privatization. We cannot give away the commons.
Thank you, Monica. I'm going to bring up the next caller. We want to make sure all our callers get a chance. Paul, go ahead. Your line's open.
Hi, Monica. I have a question for you also. It's Paul Flansworth from Rochester, New York.
Hi, Paul.
Hi. Before Detroit, basically, as you put it so eloquently, you're at war now. But what can we do to avoid having to go to war? Is there things that we can do to prevent this from happening in our cities? For example, I'm in Rochester, and right now our water is reasonably inexpensive, but just our neighbor city, Buffalo, is paying 3 to 4 times more for their same amount of water.
Yes.
And they are run by Veolia, by the way. They're not owned by Veolia, but they're run by it. Okay.
Exactly. And that's what we're seeing is that everywhere Veolia is going, we're seeing an uptick in terms of the cost. We're seeing in terms of the management cost, as well as the fact that they are talking about doing this process here in Detroit called optimization, where they're going to give us less quality and more cost. And so if we're not careful with Veolia, knowing their track record, they are not just coming after water, they're coming after transportation, they're coming after land. They've got their hands in several things. I think what we've got to do is, one is, as I said, advocate for these policies that create equity. One of the things we know is water affordability allows people to pay what they can afford, especially for low-income people that meet the federal standard. And what that would be is they would pay between 2.7% to about 4% of their income. And this has been, already sort of vetted at the federal level already. And so that would allow everyone to be investing into the water system. This is not about no one paying anything. This is about people paying what they can. And then, as I said earlier, if we can move toward water being a human right and everyone having access to water, I think would be the standard.
Thanks, Monica. Next caller at area code 573.
Yeah, hi, this is Elizabeth. I'm calling from Arizona. I guess this is probably for Mr. Jones. I'm wondering if the TransCanada lawsuit against the U.S. for lost profits is making a difference in the conversation around the TPP at all?
I think it's made a small difference. I think, to be honest, what's making a bigger difference in the debate in Washington at the moment about TPP is the presidential campaign and the fact that nominally, at least, none of the main candidates, none of the candidates that currently have a path to being the nominee of either the Republicans or the Democrats claim to support the TPP. And I think that's really fundamentally shifted the debate. It was always going to be a close vote, but I think it's really shifted the debate in Washington right now that you've got those candidates saying, in some, basically speaking the truth about the deal.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And this is my last question. Caller at area code 973. Go ahead.
Thank you. My name is Mark Tolpin. I'm a pediatrician from New Jersey, but I've practiced in academics and so forth in a number of other regions of the country. What you're talking about, and I give a special note to Monica, and thanks, because she has pointed out so many of the issues that this impacts, is a series of tips of icebergs that are showing up. But if you go back, it's not just lead composition in pipelines. It's also dealing with waste material being dumped into water by the various energy companies as part of their runoffs rather than their detoxification of water used in their coal mines and their fracking and so forth, that contain other heavy metals that can be equally dangerous, if not even sometimes, in some cases, more so. We've seen this, in pediatrics, in inner cities with the lead-based paint issues, and it's darn difficult to, especially in the current milieu, bring a child in and chelate them to remove adequate quantities of lead, and has been shown also that there's a disparity between what the lead level is in the blood and long-time exposure and what really is present and doing damage. But we also have to get rid of mercury in fish. We certainly have to realize that privatization is basically the new mode of trickle down where somebody at the top makes a great deal of extra money, adds bureaucracy on, hikes the price, lowers their quality because they really, as a monopoly or virtual monopoly, have no vested interest in producing a quality product. And then you add on top of that the for-profit industries, like of which Nestle is one, but only one. It's one of the more egregious ones in that it also has, for example, in Africa, given dried infant formula out to people without the means of assessing clean water, and then the babies get sick from it having been mixed in with very, very contaminated water, usually with pathogens. And there have been many.
Excuse me, current speaker, do you have a question? And I'm very interested in, would you be willing to write an article?
Okay, well, I was going to ask you whether, in fact, there was anything that I could do to help try to bring this together, because it feeds into so many of our problems. And I'd like to know what everybody on the board here, on the panel, feels about working with other organizations that work with toxins, poison control centers, educational institutions, various forms of research, epidemiologic organizations like the CDC, and also health, and then some of these organizations that are out to reveal, like Consumer Reports, what these large companies are doing, and that this is just part of the spectrum.
Mitch, then Monica.
Well, I think that most of the organizations that are working on not only on TPP and trade, but also on issues around environmental pollution, environmental justice, privatization, do already try to work as closely as possible with other organizations who bring different skill sets or different perspectives to the table. But it's definitely the only way that we're going to be able to win any of these fights is obviously by bringing all of the various strains that are affected by them together, organizing effectively, building the political power that we need to make sure that we have elected officials that are going to take the action that needs to be taken to make sure that we don't have water privatizations, that we don't have TPP, that we don't have woefully underfunded water utilities, which has been a problem for decades now at the federal government level. So, I do think it's going to take as broad-based a coalition. It's going to take as many different and unique voices as possible, and it's going to take, a lot of grassroots organizing to make sure that folks realize that they have the power to put the end to this.
I would just echo what Mitch just said, that we definitely have to continue to collaborate and join our fights. We say unite the fight all the time, that it has to be all of us coming together, understanding that all of our issues are important and necessary. And then one of the things we know that is coming up is that we've got to continue to push forward in Michigan the 11 pieces of legislation that are dealing with some aspect of water affordability and clean water. So hopefully anybody that's in Michigan will be a part of that initiative as well.
And for the gentleman who had the question, the pediatrician, I'd like him to email me or anybody else that's on the call. Please feel free My email is Andrea, ANDREA, at peopledemandingaction.org, and I will put that in the chat box. Next caller, area code 304.
Oh, hello. I'm sorry. This is Mary Lickard from West Virginia, and we have our own problems with water here. Thank you to both speakers. Just a quick question. Let's see, Monica, I believe you mentioned an organization that we could look up. Is it a global organization, water organization?
Was it pertaining to Veolia?
No, it's just a coalition of...
Well, our organization is We the People of Detroit. We're a part of a coalition here in Michigan, the People's Water Board. And that consists of representation from Food and Water Watch, Sierra Club, Michigan Welfare Rights. Over 38 organizations came together about 10 years ago and have been working on this issue of making sure that water stays in here.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, I think I put up their link as well.
And then one of the things I was going to say is for something that is this big and becoming this concentrated, it really will be critical for us to come together, as both Monica and Mitch have said, and really everybody putting in their area of expertise and joining together, because these are multi-billion-dollar companies that we are fighting. And Paul, one last question. Make it short.
Yes, this is a question for Mitch. Currently, New York State we want a local effort to defeat Shell from getting water extraction out of the Finger Lakes Basin, and we're requiring Shell, the Shell subsidiary, to come up with an environmental impact statement. And so we're going to scrutinize that. So my question to you is, if the TPP were to pass, could our deliberations be threatened, and if so, how?
Yeah, well, TPP, it would be a question as to whether or not the subsidiary of Shell is related to, and how it's related to the companies that Shell has in any of the TPP member nations, which, with Canada being a party of TPP, would be pretty easy. Shell would be much more obviously able to utilize TTIP if and when that comes down the road. But yeah, the local efforts there would be threatened by these provisions if this one would already be grandfathered in, but future efforts to stop similar water extraction, bulk water extraction, whether it's for bottled water or for energy development or whatever else, would be potentially threatened by these trade deals.
And how would that be? How would they be threatened?
They would be able to be challenged either through just the traditional forms of challenging a decision like I talked about with the bottled water, or through the investor state, where the company would be able to bring the case saying that your local government's policy was impacting their ability to earn money, which at the end of the day is what these deals are designed to protect.
Thank you, Mitch and Monica. I want to bring up our next guest, who is joining us all the way from Peru. Her name is Wendy Stefani. She was born in Lima in 1992. She's 24 years old, same age as my daughter, and she's worked as a teacher since she was 17. She taught herself English, got a position at an elementary school as a teacher. She's an autodidact. She spends her free time reading, singing, writing poetry, painting, but most of all, she is an activist because she believes you must encourage people to take action, especially in Peru. She is not part of an organized group because she thinks being free, you can share with all the groups. She's against mining, against any form of domination of all species, against industry, and against the terrible system in her country. Wendy, welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Can you listen to me?
Yes, we hear you.
Well, thanks for listening. We all hear now about TPP. The TPP will be international tribunals that will make them pay millions to each country for failing to enforce their interests. TPP benefits for Peru are unclear, and the cost to the economy will be really high. In Peru, these are some of the consequences. First of all, slavery will rise, only bring more drugs, have more transgenic foods that kill our diversity of agricultural products. The signing of the trade pact will position Peru as one of the countries with trade agreements in the region, allowing you to boost its foreign trade. By accepting grants up to 8 years of patent protection of biological drugs imported, the price of some medicines also are more expensive by up to 30%. Why are we alerted here in Peru? Why are we going to march tomorrow? Because these biological drugs are very expensive, and diseases such as cancer, HIV, AIDS, hemophilia, we are talking about drugs that are not aspirin or those that can cost you one sol. We are talking about drugs that cost 5,000, 6,000, or even 10,000 soles for 10 or 12 pills. So is that not a crime? This agreement places the investor rights above the right of people and benefits the international lobby. The big losers in the TPP here in my country are patients and treatment providers in developing countries. This is the worst trade agreement for access to medicines in developing countries, which will be forced to change their laws to incorporate abusive intellectual property protections for pharmaceutical companies. Now we know that what separates developed countries from developing countries is a knowledge gap. And this gap, TPP, will make that harder to close, even if it's based on the theft of genetic material from the Peruvian Amazon. The TPP achieves this through a series of seemingly secret rules, also with a dark jargon-related patent linkage and biological, which together enable business to extend their monopolies for many years more changes. This will be especially costly for Peru, whose current legislation encourages more data exchange and research. The TPP also will reduce the capacity of member countries, among them Peru, to approve regulatory legal standards to protect public health, safety, and the environment, because it will create mechanisms for resolving disputes between investors and states that allow foreign to the government when they feel a regulation will affect their profits. So this, the company would be compensated not only for the investments already made, but by the loss of their expected benefits, even if their profits are generated by selling products that kill people, and even if there was discrimination in the regulation national. These are not hypothetical threats. Existing agreements similar investment and have led such demands. In fact, here in Peru is currently facing a lawsuit for $800 million company to determine if Renco can continue to operate a metal smelter in La Oroya here in Peru, which is considered among the 10 most polluted places in the world, and also seeks avoid paying compensation for victims and rehabilitation of the city. So it's very terrible, the situation here. There are lots of people sick for contamination with metals. Under the TPP, government will actually pay to foreign investors by not polluting and not harm the population, rather than having the freedom to regulate companies to ensure they do not harm others. The mechanisms for resolving existing disputes are bad enough. His radical expansion under TPP would be disastrous. This is particularly important in the case of Peru, where there is a long history of abuses against the environment and workers by companies. Under the TPP, the country could be sued for any changes in the legal regulations to protect workers and the environment, no matter how unreasonable or discriminatory are, as long as it affects earnings of companies. An even more difficult struggle to improve working conditions and living standards of workers and stop the unsustainable exploitation of environmental assets in the country. We are fighting, trying to educate people, because vast majority don't know what TPP is going to be for our country and for every one of them. So the sovereignty of the signatory state is lost. In short, it will not be allowed any of the protests. For all countries, bloc will force the country to accept despite the opposition of people. The recent elections in our country, which has been a fraud, a spring market in favor of candidate Keiko Fujimori, daughter of former dictator Alberto Fujimori, were reported to have put our country in a difficult position. We have to choose between two candidates who support the TPP because they have no environmental awareness. They are not interested benefit the people. PPK, who has a history of having given our resource abroad, it is the lesser evil, but does not represent all of those who fight every day for respect for our resources. This debating panorama not prevent. However, we are firm resistance, and we are becoming more willing to vitiate or null our votes because nature represents us. About water, in this country, government wants to destroy the company Sedapal for the private sector to assume it's privatizing each other of the major areas of Sedapal current operation. That warned that such privatization would bring a substantial increase in home prices of water, segregation to the majority of citizens in providing and information processes, and state investment to develop projects Sedapal supplied to the districts of Lima. It's important to remember all Amazon is left oil block, and according to Peruvian laws, they belong to the state. If there is oil in a protected area, it will explode, causing damage to the species living there. That doesn't matter for authorities. This is a big crime, and authorities say nothing. My partners all over the world listen to me. We have an important mission. We have to teach kids to take action since they are little, instead of lying about a perfect world. They are going to finish what our parents have started. It's a long fight. The monster is big. How important is to share information? Doesn't matter if we work a lot, if we don't have time to take the streets, marching or protesting. We can educate from our mobile phones, educate one by one if necessary. Tomorrow, April 18th, in all the country, we are going to protest because we don't think to let government to include our beautiful country in equal trade relations. In order to educate and encourage more people, partners in cities as Cajamarca, Moyobamba, Cusco, and Lima are going to unite forces to make the government hear our voices, and I think it's all over the world. I send a hug to all of you listening. Keep standing up. Never give up, because a better world is possible. It's up to you. Infinite love for all of you listen to me. Thanks for listening.
Thank you, Wendy. Thank you very much. And I put it in the chat box. I will help people that are phone only. I do have Wendy's remarks, and I will be posting Wendy's remarks along with the PowerPoint and the links that we are going to have to this call's recording. Our next guest is no stranger to these calls, Dr. Margaret Flowers. She's a pediatrician. We apparently have two on tonight's call. She is co-chair of the Maryland chapter of Physicians for a National Health Program, NHP. She is also co-director of popularresistance.org and It's Our Economy. And she's co-organizer of Flush the TPP. Margaret, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you for inviting me to the call again, Andrea. Thanks to everybody who's on for being on the call tonight. I won't take too much time, but I wanted to give you an update about some of the upcoming actions that we have planned for this year. So as many of you know, in mid-May, the U.S. International Trade Commission is expected to release its economic impact report for the TPP. And when we look at that commission, we can see very clearly that the members of the commission are very pro-trade, former employees of the trade representative or the USAID, Chamber of Commerce, Commerce Committee, anyway, the Commerce Cabinet. And I'm trying to open the computer and talk at the same time. And so they use a model which really underestimates the impact, economic impact of past trade agreements. And so we expect the same thing to happen this time. For example, the most recent agreement, the Korea Free Trade Agreement, they anticipated a $10 to $11 billion increase, overall increase in exports and 70,000 new jobs. And instead, we've had a almost $12 billion increase in our trade deficit or loss of, trade, and we've lost 75,000 jobs. So in response to that, we have launched something called the TPP Truth Campaign, and we've written the People's Economic Impact Statement for the TPP using the Tufts University study and some other data to show the negative impact that the TPP will have. And we're asking people to use that report. It's both the full report and then there's a 2-pager that you can download if you go to flushthetpp.org and TPP-truth-campaign. You'll find everything that you need there to talk about the campaign. We're asking you to use it in social media, to educate people in your community if you're doing teach-ins or going to events and flyering. Also to deliver the People's Economic Impact Statement to your member of Congress's office. And let's really get out in front of this USITC report and, kind of debunk the misinformation that we expect them to put out there. If you're anywhere near the Washington area, we're going to be having a TPP, Stop the TPP contingent in the May Day March. So we invite you to that in Washington, D.C. on Sunday, May 1st. And that will leave from Malcolm X Park around 3:30. There's going to be a rally before that starting at 2. And we'll march down to the White House. And then we're organizing a anti-TPP contingent in the march on July 24th in Philadelphia at the Democratic National Convention. So we invite you to, participate in that as well if you're planning to be there. And then finally, we are organizing towards the lame duck session because that's when it sounds like they're planning to bring the TPP implementing legislation to Congress for a vote. And the lame duck session, for those of you that are not familiar with it, is the session which occurs after the election and before the winter break. So it's when members of Congress, some of them have been voted out of office, but they continue to hold office and they can still vote. And this is a time when typically unpopular legislation is pushed through Congress. Now there's already a push by the Freedom Caucus, which is a conservative caucus in Congress, to prevent any votes during the lame duck session. They don't see it as being a time when that should be happening. And so one of the things that we would like to do is encourage you to contact members of other caucuses, especially the Congressional Progressive Caucus, which is the largest caucus in Congress, to get them to also push for no votes during the lame duck session. And we are also preparing to mobilize in case that doesn't happen. We need to generate thousands of people who are willing to take some sort of action right as soon as the lame duck starts in order to prevent members of Congress, create the political environment that makes it impossible for members of Congress to consider the TPP. And so that can take a number of forms. We're mobilizing people who are able to come to Washington, D.C. to do that for the week starting November 14th, which is the first week after the elections that Congress will be in office. And then they go on break for 10 days, so that's a period when people can be organizing actions at home to continue to put pressure on them. Then they come back for 3 more weeks in Washington, D.C., and if we need to, we'll continue to protest during that time. December 16th, they're finished. They go home, and so that's kind of our plan for the lame duck session. So you can go to flushthetpp.org/nolameduck and find information about that. There's a web form that we're asking people to fill out so that we can keep in touch with you, so we can know whether you're able to come to Washington or organize or participate in something locally. So the more people that we can get participating in this, the better chance we have of creating that political environment so they don't bring that. And one thing that one possibility is that we've been talking to many of the young people that are inspired by the whole kind of Bernie Sanders campaign and his call for a political revolution, and understanding that as soon as the election is over, no matter who is elected, it's really up to people to mobilize and set the agenda for the next 4 years. So we really see this November mobilization as a beginning of that, and a time when it's really critical to stop the TPP and then begin to set the agenda for the next 4 years. The people are going to need to be the people who set that agenda. So we're encouraging people in their activist circles to have discussions about what that looks like, people mobilizing to set the political agenda for the next 4 years, and we really encourage you to join us for the No Lame Duck. If you go to the website page, flushthetpp.org, No Lame Duck, you'll find that there is a sign-up sheet that you can take with you to events to sign up people to join this, as well as a quarter-page flyer that you can print and distribute to spread the word. So if you have any questions or want to be involved in any other way, please contact me. My best email is info@popularresistance.org. Thank you very much.
Margaret, are there Wednesday calls?
Oh, yes, thank you. Yes, we are right now holding our phone calls, our national TPP resistance calls every other Wednesday, and so the next one is going to be April 27th, and that's 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. And if you go to flushthetpp.org and look at the top of the news page, you'll find information about how to register for that call. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much, Margaret, for joining us. It is a pleasure and honor always. Now, one of our own, Adam Weitzman, member of the call planning team. So many of our speakers are people that Adam is able to recruit for us. Adam, I'm going to just let you take it away.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Okay. So, as in many weeks, there's so many news stories this week, it was almost hard to pick which ones to highlight. So let's just get right to it. Just to preface this, the stories that I'm going to be talking to you about here are just the tip of the iceberg. You can find many more TPP news stories featured at tradejustice.net/news. You can also just go to tradejustice.net and click the news link in the sidebar. So some of the stories for this week, the U.S. Labor Department has raised concerns about Peru's textile and apparel industries based on concerns about labor rights violations. This is in response to a petition filed by the U.S. International Labor Rights Forum and other and Peruvian nonprofits, Peruvian labor NGOs. It's a good sign that the Labor Department is following up on this. This is they filed this report as part of their commitment under the U.S.-Peru Free Trade Agreement. However, it's also a sign that up to this point, the Labor Department has, or the Peru FTA has not followed through on its promises to defend labor rights. So we should follow this closely to see if real action is taken as a result of this. In a bizarre but somewhat amusing story, The Intercept reports that heads of local chambers of commerce in California have been found to be sending op-eds that bear remarkable similarities to op-eds developed by a PR agency working on behalf of the Japanese government. So we have, at this point, foreign government creating text for U.S. chambers of commerce to try to sell TPP and how TPP will be great for U.S. business. That raises a few eyebrows, to say the least. 226 ag industry groups just sent a letter to Congress in support of TPP. Meanwhile, 3 dairy industry groups also sent a letter. Their letter was much more conditional in terms of support. They want to ensure that they have strong access to the Canadian market and some other conditions if they're going to lobby strongly on behalf of TPP. On the other hand, 50 health and religious and labor groups sent a letter to Congress urging Congress to reject TPP based on how TPP would adversely impact health. In another embarrassing story for TPP advocates, New Balance, which had been previously critical of TPP, but then looked like they might be coming out in support of it, has now revealed that the reason why they were leaning in that direction was the administration had offered them potentially a military contract, making shoes for the military. Well, that eventually the government stopped returning their calls, so now they've revealed that they were basically bribed with the contract just to come out in support of TPP. Of concern, there's been a cabinet-level meeting regarding addressing concerns of the financial industry regarding a ban on data exclusivity requirements, meaning, data localization requirements, meaning that they should have to a ban on requirements by any country to store data locally in that particular country. That's an issue that groups like Open Media, these bans on localization, have said raise serious concerns about privacy as one of the as an area of concern about TPP. Well, the financial industry was not included in that ban on data localization, and so that's something that they've called on conditionally for them to support TPP. The government U.S. government has expressed a commitment to addressing that issue, and that's seen by some as a sign that the U.S. government that the administration may really be looking to try to move ahead on squaring off all the things to get industry on their side, to move ahead towards a vote during the lame duck session. There, however, is still lots of speculation as to whether a lame duck vote will or will not happen. There's one theory that Mitch McConnell may want to not do a TPP vote this year, specifically because if he doesn't, it puts Hillary Clinton in a very awkward situation next year if she's elected president. If she pushes TPP, she alienates the allies, the labor and consumer and environmental allies that helps her get elected. If she doesn't push TPP, she gives Republicans a talking point about how she is undermining economic opportunity and alienates some of the corporate backers that she's going to need to for her re-election and to help elect Democrats in the midterm to give her a Congress that can help her get some legislation passed after the 2018 election. Next slide, please. Okay, so here in New York City on April 7th, we held a press conference where members of Congress, Mayor de Blasio, and state and local elected officials came out expressing their strong opposition to TPP. These have included the state assembly member responsible for who's pushing an assembly resolution against TPP, a state senator who's circulating a letter among members of the Senate against TPP, many of the members of the Congress who signed the letter signed by 19 members of Congress against TPP, including Republican Dan Donovan, along with many Democrats. And this is a very strong statement. And what's interesting, and some people have pointed out, Crane's Business pointed out that this puts Hillary Clinton in a very awkward position because many of these people are not people who are campaigning for Bernie Sanders. These are people who back, like de Blasio, Hillary Clinton. Going into the New York primary, for them to be coming out strongly in support of the anti-TPP movement really locks Hillary into a position where it's going to make it very awkward if she then flips on that issue after these people carried water for her in the critical New York primary. So this really makes it much harder for her to back off. So that's great news. And also sends a strong message to President Obama that New York stands against TPP. Next slide. Okay, so we, speaking of the New York primary, we in New York City are taking action to try to get out the word about TPP in the primary and really try to lock down Secretary Clinton with a stronger position than the one she's already taken. She is against TPP, but she certainly is not, or at least probably against TPP, certainly is not committed to the strong stance that Bernie Sanders has taken, who says that he will outright dump TPP and not renegotiate it, will not support any trade agreement that will lead to offshoring of jobs.
Sir, this is going close for the last 10 minutes.
Okay, I'm sorry about that. Right. And will finally that he will also renegotiate the trade agreements that we already have in effect. So we're asking Senator Clinton, Secretary or Senator Clinton, depending on the year, to match those commitments. We've been leafleting at some of Bernie Sanders' rallies to tell Sanders supporters that Bernie Sanders is a strong opponent of TPP, and we can support his effort by putting pressure on Secretary Clinton to match his commitments, and by telling our members of Congress to also stand against TPP. And so we're rallying this Monday at his last leafleting at his last rally tomorrow before the primary. We're out at Prospect Park in Brooklyn today also leafleting. Also on primary day, we're going to be leafleting in the district of Representative Joe Crowley, one of our few representatives who did not sign that letter, letting his constituents know that they must contact him to oppose TPP. Next slide. Okay, some upcoming learning opportunities. On Wednesday, April 20th, Citizens Trade Campaign will be holding a national briefing call on the TPP, China, and currency. In New York City on the 21st, there's going to be a forum on the politics of investment treaties. These are the treaties that contain investor rules similar to the kind that we hear about in agreements like NAFTA, but are not necessarily part of free trade agreements. So, for example, the Bechtel case that we heard about before, the terrible case where Chevron is trying to escape responsibility for polluting the Ecuadorian Amazon. These cases are under bilateral investment treaties. One of those treaties we're currently in negotiation with China. Next slide, please. Okay, TTIP, we just learned, is coming. The Transatlantic Trade Investment Partnership is coming back to New York City. This is another negotiating round, just about a year after the last TTIP negotiating round. If you'd like to give a presentation to the negotiators in the stakeholder session, where they give us 5 or 10 minutes to say a few words about how we feel about these agreements and then ignore us, you can certainly do that. The deadline to register is April 20th. There is also opportunity to you can also ask questions of the chief negotiators. On April 28th is the day when the stakeholder session and chief negotiator sessions are taking place. Coincidentally, that same week, there's going to be a conference on TPP and TTIP in New York City with some high-profile opponents of TPP and TTIP, like Joseph Stiglitz, Lori Wallach of Public Citizen, the Sierra Club's Alana Solomon, Frank Ackerman, who we've had to speak on TPP and TTIP on these calls before, Bill McKibben, all names that should be familiar to regulars on these calls, or anyone who's involved in movements for environmental and social justice and against free trade agreements. So we really encourage people to come to New York City, if you're not already here, for the TTIP round, to register your opinions and for this conference. And perhaps while we're all here, we can come up with some other activities that we can do to raise the message as to why TTIP and other rotten trade deals must be stopped. We are still making plans, but we'll hopefully have more to announce soon, so please stay in touch with us. Next slide, please. Okay, upcoming webinars. May 1st is May Day, International Workers' Day, and we'll be having a webinar on TPP versus labor rights that our friend Celeste Drake from the AFL-CIO is going to be coordinating. And on May 15th, we'll be having John Perkins, the author of Confessions of an Economic Hitman. On May 22nd, we're doing a special call for International Day of Biodiversity on TPP's threat to wildlife with Ben Beachy from the Sierra Club. On June the 5th, we're going to be doing a webinar on commemorating the anniversary of the Bagua massacre in Peru. which is a direct consequence of the U.S.-Peru Free Trade Agreement. And on that occasion, going to be talking about how the Free Trade Agreement, how TPP also stands to undermine human rights and environmental rights in Peru. And our speaker from Peru, who we just heard today, will be joining us again on that call for a more extensive presentation. So that's some of what's coming up. Lots there, and I know that was probably way too much for people to absorb at once, but the good news is if you go to tradejustice.net, you can click on the upcoming events tab to learn more about the events, and click on the news tab for many of these news stories and other links. So thank you, everyone. Let's stop the TPP and TTIP, and happy to take questions in the chat box, or if we have time on audio. I'm going to actually just have to relocate, but I'll be back in just a few minutes to do that. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Adam. I now want to bring up our last speaker, our last activist, Mara Cohen. Mara works with me on the NMAP criminalization team, Agitator Radio, and she is now working on an organizer's resource hub. So you can write Mara at Mara, M-A-R-A-J-A-I 51 at gmail.com. Mara, take it away.
All right. Good to see all you people on the call tonight. It's really been an impactful one. And I wanted to let you know that we do have the landing page for the Organizing Resource Hub up and running. Here it is in all its glory. And this is pretty much a skeleton of what it's growing to be. We're in the early stages of it. We have a core group of people who can both start getting help going for people as well as archiving things that we come across. We're not going to be archiving articles of interest particularly unless they're of interest in honing down what you want to be the point you articulate in your organizing for whatever it is that you're organizing, or more substantive help that we can give. So if I'm not confusing you enough already, whatever issue you're working on, TPP in particular, if it's a complicated action and you just want some help with something that you need along the way, like a flyer, that'd be great. If you need help all the way from the beginning because you've never done anything before, give us a call either way. And if you want to just hook up and see what you might be able to do for us, it's not going to be a job. It's going to be when requests come in for help, we'll say, oh, yeah, so-and-so has a knack with that. And, as people learn about us, by getting help, they'll be able to give help too. And I think it's going to be a really exciting experience. So don't forget to go to peopledemandingaction.org .org.
Resource-hub. Yeah.
Right. Resource-hub. That's right. So,
that box.
Oh, okay, great, terrific. And just the reason I stumble for words is because we'll pretty much help with anything you need in organizing beginning to end. So if you think, oh, all this sounds exciting, I want to do something, but what and how, we'll lead you through. And if you're just totally taxed by doing a really big action, you're a sort of an advanced organizer, we can help you find that extra little thing that you need at the last minute. So thank you very much, everybody, and thank you for such a great call tonight, and we'll talk to you soon.
All right. Thank you, Mara. I'm only going to take a couple of questions if I have any. Does anybody have any questions for our activist organizers? *6 to get on the queue. And because we're running late, I only want questions, don't want statements right now. All right, this looks really good. Our activist organizers always do a great and phenomenal job. We don't have any questions.